Okay, just look at this shot. Listen to this music. We know so much about this character just from these three elements. That first moment, this shot, and this music. No context needed at all. You don't need to watch this movie. You don't even need to know what this movie is. And by the way, in these few moments, this character has not even done anything. He has done nothing, and that itself is what tells us so much. Let's break this down. We know there's something different about this guy, something that sets him apart from his peers. You might even say something that sets him above his peers. We get a powerful sense of personality. This guy is fearless. He is disciplined. He has a crazy amount of self-control. Not only did he not stumble like the rest of the soldiers, he didn't even flinch. He didn't move a hair. He kept himself absolutely still. And he is loyal. We're seeing the picture of a perfect soldier. And on that note, we can infer this guy is a villain. He is an Indian soldier working for his colonial overlords against his fellow countrymen. That certainly sounds like a villain. He is a traitor in the eyes of this movie's intended audience. So once we have that hypothesis, again, almost immediately we're getting a sense of an ideology. Or actually, no, it's more nuanced than that. We're actually getting a sense of several possibilities for sets of ideologies and values. This Indian servant of the empire, is he pro-colonialist? Does he believe the British are good for India? Or is he pro-monarchy? Skipping ahead a bit, we see him leap to defend the honor of the king. Maybe he just worships George V. Or is he ambitious? Again, skipping ahead a bit, but even here we get very subtle aesthetic clues. The protesters are kind of dirty and look poor, maybe even malnourished, and then the officers all look clean, polished, healthy. So that's another very intuitive speculation for this guy's motivation. And you also gotta wonder, what does he think about these protests? What does he think about other Indian people? This death stare of his is so cold that maybe he doesn't think about them much at all. Maybe he doesn't even have an ideology. Maybe he's just a psychopath who wants to beat people up, and this job allows him to do that. From what we see, it could be any of these options or something else entirely, but it has to be something. We know that much. We know there's a story behind this. This incongruity of just who he is really draws us in already, and this is just the first couple seconds of seeing him. So we get all of this distinction, personality, character traits, possible values, and ideologies in seconds with no dialogue at all, and that is going to continue. We'll get some sparing dialogue from other characters, but we are going to get a full rounded picture of who this guy is without him speaking a single word. So impressive, especially since there's so much going on in the sequence. In the opening shots, we've already been introduced to a really chaotic scene, and then right away we get a scene that serves a very vital practical purpose. I want you to imagine what the scene would be without what we see next, without this.
Arrest that bastard!
This conflict is everyone we see here against everyone we see here. That is too much. Too many people, too complex of a subject matter, too many moving parts to the situation, too many ways this could go. We need something to focus the scene in terms of how we are dealing with it, in terms of who we are dealing with, and in terms of why. So instead of solving all of colonization along with all of its ills, we are funneled into one soldier, mustache guy, being sent with a specific goal of arresting one protester, red shirt guy, because he disrespected the king. That is much more manageable. That's something we can hold in our heads while we focus on other things, like meeting this main character. Okay, now let's talk about what is about to happen here, these monumentally insane odds. I talked about the concept of layered stakes a couple weeks ago with Helm's Deep. Here it is layered and it's all visual. It's all shown, not told. We don't just have 1 versus 10,000. They don't just leave the imbalance at the numbers themselves. No, this lone soldier doesn't even have an adequate weapon. Nothing sharp, nothing spiky, nothing even made of metal, and certainly not firepower, which seeds depth that we'll talk about in a minute. All he has is a wooden stick. And another layer here, the fence. Once our guy goes out there, he cannot just give up and come back to safety. This shot right here isn't just to introduce us to this character's physical prowess, it's also to very subtly show that this crisis has reached such a level that this fence cannot even be safely opened to let someone out, much less to let someone back in. As flimsy as this fence is for our guy, this is a firm barrier. We get that it's going to be even more of a challenge to get back in than it was to get out. And another layer here is just the intentionality of it all. This guy isn't ordered individually to do this. He volunteers, he takes initiative. Despite the odds, he thinks he can do it. So we have the added stakes of, is he right? Is this unfounded arrogance or well-founded confidence? And then embellishing this, we have the onlookers, his fellow soldiers and his superior officers. They also don't think he can do this. And they're the ones who will be reacting to all this if he succeeds or fails. So we want to see what happens. We want to see who's right here. And with these stakes, we get something so rarely done, and so rarely done this honestly. You'll hear a lot of writing advice about throwing challenges in front of the heroes of the story, and that's true, but you rarely hear about setting up challenges for the villains. And that's exactly what this is. This sequence provides a mini arc for us to watch the villain go through, and this accomplishes several vital things. First is the JFK principle. If we want the audience to respect a character's strength, we shouldn't choose challenges because they are easy, but because they are hard. Showing what we overcome changes how people see us. In a story, a good quantifiable challenge gives us a benchmark to calculate the character's strength. It is no longer some abstract thing. This guy takes out 5 Nazgul. This gal killed hundreds of of mimics. And this guy fought off a million protesters. Second vital thing here is the Rocky principle.
But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
Because seeing the entire journey, we get not just the fact of the strength, but everything that goes into that strength. A challenge gives us a medium, it gives us a stage to showcase all these compelling character traits, values, ideologies, and motivations we're setting up. And we already started with that, but we're about to get so much more. And right away, straight out of the gate, what we see is not some invincible warrior who can magically fight off 500,000 other people. No, on the contrary, almost as soon as this guy jumps the fence, what happens to him is exactly what we expect to happen. He gets completely overwhelmed and dogpiled and crushed by the crowd, because of course that's what's going to happen. And this is where the magic begins. First of all, can we talk about this camera angle? We're treated to perspective here I don't think I have ever seen in a movie. We are experiencing what it looks like, what it feels like to be dogpiled by 50 people all at once. We are with our guy inside that pile. We get the ringing in his ears, we get the commands of his superiors echoing in his mind, and this unexpected picture of calmness, of single-minded focus. It is not nearly as chaotic inside this guy's head as we expect. Now, this scene is totally going to have us suspending disbelief by a lot, but what we see next is a perfect lesson on how to lead the audience by the hand down the road of suspension of disbelief. How to do it the right way, the effective way. If we were just to see a mystical Dragon Ball-esque burst of strength and the crowds go flying, no, that's silly, we don't buy that. The most immersive method of getting the audience to suspend disbelief is making sure every individual step is realistic. The sum of the steps, that's the unrealistic part. And that's okay because that's more abstract, it's hard to hold in our feeble, mushy brains while we're watching the scene. We want you to focus on the particulars one by one. First thing our character does is grab a guy's ear. That seems reasonable, that would hurt. Then he breaks a guy's wrist. That man stumbles backwards, and then his backing up gives us some space. We elbow a guy, choke a guy, whack another, and each of these little steps contributes to this thin facade of realism on the micro level. Yes, it's true, each of these actions could technically free up some space. That seems possible to us. It is sort of realistic that these people might be unsteady on their feet in such chaos, and maybe if you push them hard enough, they'd lose their balance and fall over. It's like there's nothing too implausible about just that one thought. Each component is like, I could see it, I guess, but then the sum total is definitely unrealistic. And then the other thing here that maintains immersion is keeping realistic elements against our goals, and this is also on a micro level. Throughout this entire sequence, our guy is getting punched and pounded and dragged and tackled, etc. And again, one punch, one tackle, one head rock. Theoretically, surviving each of these blows individually is realistic, it's plausible, but again, the sum total, totally unrealistic. He's not going to survive every single one of these. But once we start buying the scene on the micro level, we become open to suspending our disbelief on the macro level. Now, throughout all this, I would say the most inhumanly powerful element on display here, even more than the guy's strength itself, is his single-mindedness. This entire time, his eyes are on the prize. He is locked on red shirt guy. That is all he is thinking about. And his face has barely even changed at all from the moment we met him. This guy is an unyielding force. And here's where the music comes in. Listen to this. Notice anything? So I'm no music guy, correct me if I'm mishearing this, but this motif starts and then stubbornly finishes on the same note. And this applies both to the high motif with the trumpet, which feels more fiery, more passionate, and to the low motif with the strings, which feels grounded and immovable. And I gotta say, character work with really expressive music is something that is so cool to me. Our focus is unwavering. So throughout all this, they do a great job overall of spacing out these wide shots to remind the viewer of just how many people we are up against here, how chaotic of a mess our guy is stubbornly focusing his way through. And here we see a new little characteristic. We see him planning. We are going to lure all the people who are after us onto the tower thing, knowing it will collapse, and that will deal with a bunch of these pesky protesters, and it will get us closer to Redshirt. And then also it's going to put us in another position where we can use gravity to take out multiple opponents at once, all while cushioning our fall to get us even closer. So with this big cunning plan, we see our guy is not just focused, disciplined, loyal, etc. He also has a brain. Dumbness is not going to be his weakness. He's not just some big brute who gets easily outsmarted. No, he has a plan, and the plan works. And he gets Redshirt guy. And suddenly we're thrown into the home stretch here. And something really interesting happens here. Maybe it even started earlier for you. Another important function of an arc is bonding you to the character. If we go through a whole difficult journey with a character and see them struggle and grit their teeth and stay strong and power through, we feel invested in this person. Being next to someone for an entire little progression of events, that builds a relationship. We identify with them. We admire their effort, their strength, their drive, and we want them to succeed by the end. And weirdly, at some point throughout all this, I would guess most of us started rooting for the Indian colonialist traitor guy here, even though in our political ideological minds he is on the wrong side of this conflict. Even though what we are watching him do is arrest a fairly innocent protester supporting a moral cause. Remember, red shirt guy threw a stone and didn't even hurt anyone. He just broke a picture of a king, this head of a colonial empire, a monarchy. I think most of us disagree with this political system. So our guy is doing something kind of bad. But by watching all these really admirable qualities and strength this guy shows us by doing this impossible task, we are so ready to taste that sweet catharsis of him completing his mission. Let's go, mustache guy. You can do it. You are almost there. We want to see you use everything at your disposal. Yeah, burn these guys. Burn these protesters. Let's see that ingenuity. There you go. If this guy is a villain, what is the point of all this? So even on the surface, not knowing what the rest of the movie will be like, we are creating complex emotions. We're adding nuance to our relationship with this character. Part of us hates this guy for what he stands for. Part of us admires him. Part of us is rooting against him. Part of us is rooting for him. A relationship that has unique, complex, nuanced feelings attached to it. That feels special. Makes the relationship memorable. Makes it feel realistic and makes us want to know more. So we sit and we are stewing with all this, watching this guy fight tooth and nail for this impossible goal. And he does it. He is in. And then we get the perfect cathartic conclusion to this little story. Just like the music, our guy is back where he started. He is immovable. He is disciplined. He is controlled. The perfect loyal colonialist Indian officer. Cool, calm, and collected. But then, in the final scene to this intro sequence, we see that facade shatter. And we get a little more info. This guy, whatever his political beliefs, was after a promotion. And he did not get it. And he didn't get it due to the colonial prejudices of the regime he works for. We see 3 Englishmen chosen over him. So now this whole thing is even more complicated. What the heck is going on with this guy? We are even more hooked now. And our final scene from this introduction is a totally new side of this character. White hot rage. We see some of what we thought would come out in the previous scene, these chaotic, fiery emotions. This is not the almost robotic, calculated, practical application of force towards a goal. No, this is an explosion of anger. And that's fascinating because now we have a super broad picture of who this guy is. We have seen him at his best and at his worst. We've seen him succeed. We've seen him fail, his public self and his private self. Controlled and chaotic, calm and enraged, ice cold and on fire. It is a really full picture of a rounded personality. And we don't even know this guy's name. We have never heard him speak. And it's been less than 10 minutes since we met him. Unbelievable. Okay, so we're going to get to spoilers in a bit, so beware. But let me just go back to that namelessness thing for a second. In my description of the scene, I have maintained that namelessness so far because I think it's important. Not knowing Ram's name is cool. It gives him a mystique. We got layers. This is a nameless, low-level officer to the outside world when we meet him. But when we get to know him, we see he is this invincible badass. That is depth. But it's also space. We haven't learned the basics of who he is. All we know is that he has a mustache and he's a badass, and that's it. So that's a promise that very soon we will learn more. Characters like this do not stay nameless, mostly. And Nameless Ram is a low-level soldier who has big goals. He wants that promotion, he wants to rise up the ranks. That space as well, that is also a promise. This guy will not be content to stay in his low station. Will he go far, or will the white dudes keep getting his promotions? Okay, now for the spoiler section of this video. Are you ready? May I proceed? I am proceeding. So, Ram is given a villain's introduction, and he does serve an antagonist role in the first movie of this movie. And by that, I mean Triple R could have definitely been 2 movies or even a miniseries. But anyway, he is introduced as a villain. He is secretly a hero, a really complex one. And incredibly, this introduction scene also sets up that twist perfectly. And this blows my mind, because you cannot just make any villain do a heel face turn. Because what is it that suddenly transforms all these evil things about them into good things? But with Ram, what do we see that makes him such a compelling and scary villain? He is fearless, he is loyal, he is disciplined, he's immovable, stubborn, focused, intelligent. These are all heroic qualities too. And all of them, but especially loyalty, discipline, and immovability, are actually exactly what allow him to be such a hero. Once we learn more, we see that his backstory demands exponentially more loyalty and self-control, and everything else than what we see displayed here. That is such a cool and subtle way of seeding depth early on. We did not set up this protagonist with qualities like cruelty, deceit, hunger for power, greed, envy, which are all pretty morally condemnable qualities no matter what the context. No, we specifically gave him qualities like extreme loyalty and discipline and intelligence, which have a duality. They can be admirable or condemnable depending on the end goal. And then all of Ram's scary evil qualities become heroic good qualities instantly once we learn his story. We don't need him to do any work, don't need him to repent or change or anything. No, this is still exactly the guy we know, and now we just somehow feel the opposite about him. Although I'll caveat that too, because like I said, we already did start to grow some admiration for him. So that is seeding even our eventual emotional relationship with him very early on, even back when we feel the opposite about him, or when we're supposed to feel the opposite about him. We kind of like this guy from the start, and obviously that continues. This whole experience, what I just described, is exactly the conflicted relationship with him that we have with Beam, and the instant elimination of all that conflict is also reflected in Beam's reaction to learning Ram's backstory. We experience along with the main character this instant shift in how we feel about this character. I love when character depth has fake stopping points. We think this guy is just a colonialist shill, and that's it, end of story. We think he's just ambitious for his career, he wants that promotion, end of story. He is loyal to England, end of story. And then the bottom drops out, we see all of this depth. And it's not a bait and switch, we get the bait. It's like the mouse gets the little piece of cheese, and then he gets the key to the whole cheese factory. So this movie is weird, for me at least, and probably for anyone else who, like me, hasn't been exposed to much Hindi cinema. And I think a lot of us probably don't really jive with how over the top this movie is in like literally every single aspect. It just beats you over the head with every feeling it wants you to feel, which is fun, but it's also rough, and it can break immersion super easily if that's not what you're used to. But I want to mention that one function of the over-the-topness here is one of my absolute favorite ways of setting up an antagonist. When we see a villain basically prove himself to be invincible, that creates a new category of stakes. Think T-1000 in Terminator 2, the agents in the Matrix, Logia types in a lot of One Piece. It's how is it possible for this guy to be defeated? What can possibly bring down a villain like this? That is exciting to me. I'm not waiting for feelings from what I know will happen, what I've seen happen before. No, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm been shown a promise that this conflict is going to take me to places I cannot yet fathom. I don't know what the true fight will even look like, and I don't know what kinds of new feelings it might evoke in me. I love that. Subscribe if you'd like to. If any of you have any recommendations for interesting Hindi films, let me know in the comments. I'm curious about this whole world of stories I've never really been exposed to. Support the channel on Patreon. Shoutouts to the new high-tier patrons, Mirakium, Martin Evans, and Ryan Cross. Thank you so much, and I'm excited to help you with your writing projects. If anyone doesn't know, I do a 1-hour writing consultation as a monthly $25 perk, so especially anyone doing NaNoWriMo this November, if you're interested in that, check it out, link in the description. Hope you all enjoyed this little foray into something kind of new for me, and thanks for watching.